Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I welcome everyone for reading Prabhupada LILAMRITA. We are on chapter 18, the breaking ground, right? Any memories, any reflections from yesterday quickly, where we ended? I'm sorry, I mixed. This one Prabhupada we read, right? Chant softly. Prabhupada used to say, chant softly here, and he asked the boys to clap softly, sitting. Did we finish this chapter? No, right?
I think.
Okay, we need to start from here, right?
Yeah.
Chuck. So this is the program, early morning program, which the youth is attending. You know, some of the people are attending 6 a.m. in the morning. Yeah, that's what we did. So Chuck, the Swami was sitting there, and in the mornings he would look not shiny and brilliant, but very withdrawn. He looked as if he could sit like a stone, maybe forever. Not shiny and brilliant, but very withdrawn. He can sit like a stone, maybe forever. His eyes were only two tiny slits of glistening light. He took out his cymbal and played lightly on the edge. 1, 2, 3. And he began to sing in a deep voice that was almost eternal in its intervals. It was a melody monotone that did not express happiness or sadness, a timeless chant that told no story. We chanted along with him as best we could, but several times Swamiji stopped and said, softly. After about 30 minutes of chanting, we stopped. Then he opened his eyes wider and said, you must chant softly, because sometimes the neighbors are complaining. After singing, the Swami would give one of the boys a copy of Dr. Radhakrishnan's edition of Bhagavad Gita. That's very interesting, to read aloud from. He would correct the mispronunciation and then explain each verse. Because there was only a few people present, there was always ample time for everyone to discuss the philosophy. The class would sometimes run an hour and a half and cover 3 or 4 verses. Steve, Swamiji mentioned that mangoes were the king of all fruits. And he even mentioned that they were not easily available in this country. It occurred to me that I could bring him mangoes. There was a store on First Avenue that always kept a stock of fresh mangoes in the cooler. That's good. I began a regular habit. Every day after getting off work, I would purchase one nice mango and bring it to Swamiji. Valley, some of the boys would say, I'm doing this for the Swami. So I went to him and said, is there something I can do for you? So he told me I could take notes in his class. The boys were sure that their service to Swamiji was spiritual, devotional service. By rendering the spiritual master, who was a representative of Krishna, you were serving Krishna directly. So this is miracles. I can see now it's happening. We can see that first time a steady, some transformation is taking place. Prabhupada, though he had all these challenges in the previous place, he didn't have much freedom. But looks like because this morning program is happening in the apartment, and apartment he has to be very cautious not to disturb other people. So Chuck is sharing that how he was very careful and you sit like very, very tiny, no loud voice, kartas, very low voice volume, and then they would read Bhagavad Gita. But here Radhakrishna's edition of Bhagavad Gita, I heard it. Prabhupada used to share. What happened? What do you all remember? What happened to the Bhagavad Gita? Did he in India? He was working. Can you recall? I forgot. He was going to work on it, or he worked on it. Anyone remember? wasn't it 1600 pages or something? The book, you all remember 1600 pages, something, 2-volume Bhagavad Gita he was planning. He didn't compile?
I thought it was all Srimad Bhagavatam translation he was doing.
No, you remember he lost the whole things were lost. He sent to some South India. I think that's what it happened. He sent to South India and everything is got lost on the way.
I think that is Bhagavatam, Prabhu.
That's not Bhagavatam. Okay, we will. Maybe Bhagavatam. I don't. We will check. But I remember Bhagavad Gita. He worked on it. If I recall, I have to look in my notes. My memory is very bad. So Prabhupada, Steve remembers Prabhupada's statement, mangoes are king of all fruits and it's not available easily in this country. So he knows. So he offered a service. Every time he would come, he would bring one mango. So that's where how Sikriti is beginning, service to Krishna is beginning. Valley also did the same thing. Can you read? One more.
One morning, Prabhupada told Howard that he needed help in spreading the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Howard wanted to help, so he offered to type the Swami's manuscript of Srimad Bhagavatam. Howard, the first words of the first verse read, "O the king," and naturally I wonder whether O was the king's name and the king stood in opposition. After some time, I figured out that O king was intended. Instead, I did not make the correction without his permission. Yes, he said, change it then. I began to point out a few changes and inform him that if he wanted, I could make corrections. That I had a master's in English and taught last year at Ohio State. Oh yes, Swamiji said, do it, put it nicely. He was giving them the idea of devotional service. A devotee may not be perfect at first, he said, but if he engaged in service, once that service has begun, he can be purified. Service is always there in the material world or the spiritual, but service in the material world could not bring satisfaction to the self. Only bhakti purified service. Service rendered to Krishna could do that. And the best way to serve Krishna was to serve the representative of Krishna. They picked it up quickly. It was something you could do easily. It was not difficult like meditation. It was activity. You did something, but you did it for Krishna. They had seen Swamiji respond to the Bauri Bum who had come with a gift of toilet paper. Just see, Swamiji had said, he's not in order, but he thought, let me give some service. But service had to be done voluntarily out of love, not by force.
So now it's Howard. Howard is Hayagriva Prabhu. Yeah, that's what I was in the beginning I was saying. He's going to be taken initiated as Hayagriva. I think later he'll have trouble also, some trouble as well. So anyway, so he says, can I do something? So Prabhupada said, yeah, you can translate, not translate, what do you say? To offer to type the manuscript of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Howard is and he opened his trunk. And if I remember, it's not written here. He was surprised that so much he has to write. He opened the trunk full of manuscripts. He said, start doing. So he started his master's in English, right? Am I right? Yeah. He had a master's in English. That's a good thing. Now here the service is coming. One thing, he's giving them the idea of devotional service. A devotee may not be perfect at first, he said, but if he's engaged in service, that service has begun, he can be purified. So basically, our service may not be pure. Then how our service can be devotional service? But when we serve the pure devotees, then our service also becomes pure devotional service. that's the concept here, because in the material world or spiritual world, service is always in the material world, spiritual world, but service in the material world would not bring satisfaction to the self. Only bhakti can. And the best way to serve Krishna is to serve his representative. So, did you read this one? Did they pick up quickly? Yeah. No? Okay. Okay. So they picked up it quickly. It was something you could do easily. It was not difficult like meditation. It was activity. You did something, but you did it for Krishna. They had seen Swamiji's response to the body. Okay. Basically, he's referring to, I think the man came and offered the toilet paper. That also has considered as a service. Came knowingly or unknowingly, whatever does, it becomes spiritually benefited. Okay. Nipa, you can read.
Yes, Prabhu. Wali. Swamiji once asked me, do you think you could wear the Vaishnava Tilaka when you are on the streets? I said, well, I would feel funny doing it, but if you want me to, I will. And Swamiji said, no, I don't ask you to do anything you don't want to do. Steve, one day when I brought my daily mango to him, he was in his room surrounded by devotees. I gave him my mango and sat down, and he said, very good boy. The way he said it, as if I were just a tiny little boy, made everyone in the room laugh, and I felt foolish. Swamiji, however, then changed their mood by saying, no, this is actually love. This is Krishna consciousness. And then they didn't laugh. When Howard first volunteered to do editing, he spent the whole morning working in Swamiji's room. If there is any more typing, Howard said, let me know. I could take it back to Mott Street and type there. More? There's lots more, Swamiji said. He opened the closet and pulled out 2 large bundles of manuscripts tied in saffron cloth. There were thousands of pages, single-spaced manuscripts of Prabhupada's translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Howard stood before them, astonished. It's a lifetime of typing, he said. And Prabhupada smiled and said, oh yes, many lifetimes.
I think I said this in advance. Yeah. Go ahead.
Here, Swamiji asked Wally once if she can wear the Vaishnava Tilaka on the streets, and the reply was like, I would feel funny. So Swamiji said, no, I don't ask you to do anything which you don't want to do. Steve one day brought a mango to the room. Swamiji on that point said, very good boy. And he felt like a little tiny boy, and made everyone in the room laugh, and he felt foolish. Swamiji said that changed their mood by saying, no, this is actually love. This is what is Krishna consciousness. And then they stopped laughing. Howard first volunteered to do the editing. He spent the whole morning in working in Swamiji's room, and he asked if he can do more of the typing, and he can take it back to Mott Street and type there. Swamiji said more. There's actually not more. There's lots more to be done. And when he opened the closet and pulled out the large manuscripts, Howard was astonished to see and said, "It's like a lifetime of typing." And Prabhupada replied and said, "No, it's many lifetimes of work."
Yeah. Prasanthi?
Because of Prabhupada's presence and the words that he spoke there and Kirtans, everyone was already referring to the storefront as the temple, but still was just a bare, squalid storefront. The inspiration to decorate the place came from the Mott Street boys. Harvard, Keith, and Valley devised a scheme to surprise the Swami when he came to the evening Kirtanam. Valley removed the curtains from their apartment, took them to the laundromat, where they turned the water dark brown from filth, and then dyed them purple. The Mott Street apartment was decorated with posters, paintings, large decorative silk hangings that Howard and Keith had brought back from India. The boys gathered up all their pictures, tapestries, incense burners, and other paraphernalia and took them, along with the purple curtains, to the storefront, where they began their day of decorating. At the storefront, the boys constructed a wooden platform for Prabhupada to sit on and covered it with old velvet cloth. Behind the platform, on the rear wall, behind the two windows to the courtyard, they hung the purple curtains, flanked by a pair of orange ones. Against one orange panel, just above Swamiji's sitting place, they hung a large original painting of Radha and Krishna on a circular canvas that James Green had done. Prabhupada had commissioned James, giving him the dust jacket from his Srimad Bhagavatam with its crude Indian drawing as a model. The figures of Radha and Krishna were somewhat abstract, but the Lower East Side critics who frequented the storefront hailed the work as a wonderful achievement. So, as people started coming into the storefront, they naturally considered it as a holy place and started referring it as temple. And with that inspiration, they also wanted to decorate the place, and the Mod Street boys took that task. Uh, Howard, Keith, and Valley planned to surprise Swami in the evening. So they got the curtains from their home and they washed it nicely, and then they dyed them with purple color. And they also got a lot of decorative stuff from India from their past visit, and then they decorated the store with it. And they also hung the curtains in the storefront and in the back, and they also constructed a wooden platform for Prabhupada to sit on and nicely covered with a velvet cloth. And in the background, they hung Radha and Krishna. It's the painting that James Green, yeah, I think it's James Green, has he took the model of Srimad Bhagavatam book and then he drew it. So everybody hailed the work of all the of the painting and also the storefront decoration.
Jai, the magic is beginning now. Huh? No more, no more. The real change is already working now. You all see that, right? The real magic is beginning now. It's a wonderful thing. And Howard, Keith, and Valley. Very nice. Second room.
At the storefront, the boys constructed a wooden platform for Prabhupada to sit on and covered it with old velvet cloth. Behind the platform, on the rear wall between the two windows to the courtyard, they hung the purple curtains flanked by a pair of orange ones. Against one orange panel, just above Swamiji's sitting place, they hung a large original painting of Radha and Krishna on a circular canvas that James Green had done. Prabhupada had commissioned James, giving him the dust jacket from his Srimad Bhagavatam with its crude Indian drawing as a model. The figures of Radha and Krishna were somewhat abstract, but the Lower East Side critics who frequented the storefront hailed the work as a wonderful achievement. Keith and Howard were less confident that Prabhupada would approve of their paintings and prints from India, so they hung them near the street side of the temple away from Swamiji's seat. One of these prints, well known in India, was of Hanuman carrying a mountain through the sky to Lord Ramchandra. The boys had no idea what kind of being Hanuman was. They thought perhaps he was the cat because of the shape of his upper lip. Then there was the picture of a male person with 6 arms, 2 arms painted greenish, held a bow and arrow, another pair bluish, held a flute, and the third pair golden, held a stick and bowl. By late afternoon, they had covered the sitting platform, hung the curtains, tagged up the decorative silks and prints, and hung the paintings, and were decorating the dais with flowers and candlesticks. Someone brought a pillow for Swamiji to sit on a faded cushion from an overstuffed chair for a backrest.
Hari, oh, God.
Here, basically, Keith and Howard were making a Vyasasan for Prabhupada to sit on. They had hung purple curtains. They're trying to make like a nice presentation of the storefront. And they had an original painting of Radha and Krishna that a person, James Green, had done. Prabhupada had asked James Green to come up with the painting by showing an Indian drawing as a model. And the people who visited the storefront, they liked that the painting. And then Keith and Howard, they had some paintings and prints from India, and they were not confident the Prabhupada would like them, so they put them on this side street, on the street side of the temple. And one of them was Hanuman carrying a mountain, and then the other was basically a male person with 6 arms, 2 arms green, which held bow and arrow, and another 2 arms bluish, which held a flute, and another 2 arms golden, which held a stick and bowl. And by the afternoon, they were making everything ready with flowers, candlesticks, and also a pillow for the cushion on the, and they're making everything ready for Prabhupada to come. So Mata Josna is not here.
She's not there. Okay. One see. Swati Mataji, please read.
In addition to the Mott Street coach, Robert Nelson took one of his grandfather Belgian-style or Oriental rug from which garage in the suburbs and brought it to the subway to 22nd Street Avenue. Even Raffles and Don took part in decorating. The secret was well kept, and the boys waited to see Swamiji response. That night, when he walked in to begin the kirtan, he looked at the newly decorated temple. There were even incense burning, and he raised his eyebrows in satisfaction. You are advancing. He said as he looked around the room, smiling broadly. Yes, he added, this is Krishna consciousness. His sudden happy mood seemed almost like their reward for their earned labor. He then stepped up onto the platform while the boys held their breaths, hoping it would be steady, and he sat looking out at the devotees and the decorations. They had pleased him, but he now assumed a future of extreme gravity and thought they know he was certainly the same Swamiji. Their uh, titterings stuck in their throats, and their happy glance to each other suddenly abated in the uncertainty and nervousness. As they regarded Swamiji gravity, their joy of few moments before seemed suddenly childish, as if a cloud quickly covered the sun like a dark shade. Prabhupada changed his mood from jolly to grave, and they spontaneously resolved to become equally grave and sober. He picked up the kartas and again smiled a ray of appreciation, and their heart beamed back.
Hari, what, as Krishna Prabhupada, now Krishna is showering his mercy and giving intelligence from within. Prabhupada was surprised because they wanted to show them the surprise. Even Raphael and Don also took part in decoration. The 5 people, they made a first class arrangement, first time giving their heart, being rugs, painting, Vyasasana, decorating nicely. Prabhupada is very happy. So now is the time relationship is beginning in one sense, because that's why he become grave also. Even though he was happy inside, but he showed he still maintained his gravity. So everybody becomes serious in a country. That's the program started, and Prabhupada, he says he picked up the kartas and again smiled a ray of appreciation, and their hearts beamed back. This is a very special moment, actually. Very nice. AJ, please.
The temple was still a tiny storefront with many hidden and unhidden cockroaches, a tilted floor, and poor lighting. But because many of the decorations were from India, it had an authentic atmosphere, especially with Swamiji present on the dais. Now guests who entered were suddenly in a little Indian temple. Mike Grant. I came one evening and all of a sudden there were carpets on the floor, pictures on the wall, and paintings. Just all of a sudden it had blossomed and was full of people. I was amazed how in just a matter of days people had brought so many wonderful things. When I came that evening and saw how it had been decorated, then I wasn't so much worried that he was going to make it. I thought it was really beginning to take hold now. Prabhupada looked at his group of followers. He was moved by their offering him a seat of honor and their attempts at decorating Krishna's storefront. To see a devotee making an offering to Krishna was not new for him, but this was new. In New York, this horrible place, the seed of bhakti was growing, and naturally, as the gardener of that tender sprout, he was touched by Krishna's mercy. Glancing at the pictures on the wall, he said, "Tomorrow I will come look at the pictures and tell you which are good." The next day, Prabhupada came down to appraise the new artwork on display. One framed watercolor painting was of a man playing a drum while a girl danced. "This one is all right," he said. But another painting of a woman was more mundane, and he said, "No, this painting is not so good." He walked to the back of the temple, followed anxiously by Howard, Keith, and Wally. When he came upon the painting of the sixth-armed person, he said, "Oh, this is very nice." "Who is it?" Wally asked. "This is Lord Chaitanya," Prabhupada replied. "Why does he have 6 arms?" "Because he showed himself to be both Rama and Krishna. These are the arms of Rama, and these are the arms of Krishna." "What are the other 2 arms?" Keith asked. "Those are the arms of a sannyasi." He went to the next picture. "This is also very nice." "Who is it?" Howard asked. "This is Hanuman." "Is he a cat?" No, Prabhupada replied. "He is a monkey." Keep going. Yeah.
Can I go? You can do the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay. Hanuman is glorified in the scripture, the Ramayan, as the valiant, faithful servant of Lord Ramachandra. Millions of Indians worship the incarnation of Rama and his servitor Hanuman, whose exploits are perennially exhibited in theater, cinema, art, and temple worship. And not knowing who Hanuman was, the Mott Street boys were no less ignorant than the old ladies uptown, who, when Prabhupada had asked whether any of them had seen a picture of Krishna, had all stared blankly. The Lower East Side mystics didn't know Hanuman from a cat, and they had brought back from their hashish version of India a picture of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu without even knowing who he was. Yet there was an important difference between these boys and the ladies uptown. The boys were serving Swamiji and chanting Hare Krishna. They were through with material life and the middle class work reward syndrome. Their hearts were awakened to Swamiji's promise of expanded Krishna consciousness, and they sensed in his personal company something exalted. Like the Bowery bum who had donated toilet paper during Prabhupada's lecture, the Lower East Side boys did not have their minds quite in order, and yet as Prabhupada saw it, Krishna was guiding them within their hearts. Prabhupada knew they would change for the better by chanting and hearing about Krishna. So yeah, it's kind of wild. So the boys decorated the temple, and you know they described it. You know, Mike Grant described it. He's like, hey, it went from just being a storefront to being like an Indian temple, and that was the first time that you know he personally felt that like this is going to work. Like Prabhupada is going to be successful, and it's starting. You know, Krishna consciousness is starting to take hold. And again, you know, he was saying everybody's surprised that in New York, this horrible place, you know, the seed of bhakti was growing. And then I like that Prabhupada comes through and judges the artwork. You know, he's determining which is good and which is not good, which is, you know, acceptable, what's mundane. But surprisingly, right, the guys had come back from India with two paintings, one of Chaitanya, and not knowing that it was Lord Chaitanya. They just happened, I guess, grab whatever they thought looked cool, and then Prabhupada has to explain to them why in that painting does Chaitanya have 6 arms, and then they also came back with a picture of Hanuman as well, thinking it was a cat, and and again he has to explain to him who Hanuman was, and it gets into, even though these guys didn't really know what they were doing, right? They weren't sure what they were buying. They were just buying what caught their eye. Something was guiding their hearts, and it was Krishna, kind of drawing them to those certain things, and even though they're, like I said, they don't know what they're doing exactly, but Prabhupada, so I guess, saw potential and knew that they were starting to go the right direction. So
very nice. I think that Lord Chaitanya's picture they picked from the book, probably Prabhupada's book, probably.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Otherwise, where they would get that from? The Chaitanya, the 6-arm form, I believe they got from Prabhupada's book. Okay. Pranath Prabhu.
The summer of 1966 moved into August, and Prabhupada kept good health. For him, these were happy days. New Yorkers complained of the summer heat waves, but this caused no inconvenience to one accustomed to the 100-degree plus temperatures of Vrindavana's blazing summers. It is like India, he said, as he went without a shirt, seeming relaxed and at home. He had thought that in America he would have to subsist on boiled potatoes, otherwise there would be nothing but meat. But here he was happily eating the same rice, dal, and chapatis, and cooking on the same 3-stacked cooker as in India. Work on the Srimad Bhagavatam had also gone on regularly since he had moved into the Second Avenue apartment. And now Krishna was bringing these sincere young men who were cooking, typing, hearing him regularly, chanting Hare Krishna and asking for more. Prabhupada was still a solitary preacher, free to stay or go, writing his books in his own intimate relationship with Krishna, quite independent of the boys in the storefront. But now he had taken the International Society for Krishna Consciousness as his spiritual child. The inquiring young men, some of whom had already been chanting steadily for over a month, were like stumbling spiritual infants, and he felt responsible for guiding them. They were beginning to consider him their spiritual master, trusting him to lead them into spiritual life. Although they were unable to immediately follow the multifarious rules that Brahmanas and Vaishnavas in India followed,
Sorry. Here.
yes, he was hopeful. According to Rupa Goswami, the most important principles was that one should somehow or other become Krishna conscious. People should chant Hare Krishna and render devotional service. They should engage whatever they had in the service of Krishna. And Prabhupada was exercising this basic principle of Krishna consciousness to the furthest limit the history of Vaishnavism had ever seen. So it's the summer of 1966, and these were good times, as Prabhupada. There were some sincere souls who were engaged in Krishna consciousness, cooking, typing, hearing, and chanting. And Prabhupada was also very much comfortable and accustomed to the weather in summer. 100 degrees weather that he was accustomed to in Vrindavan, or more than that. And was also relishing honoring the rice, dal, and chapatis as he was in India. And he was continuing writing the Bhagavatam and other books, and the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. um, he was slowly trying to train young people, some of them who were chanting, and gradually, building ISKCON. And Prabhupada was well aware that these were all very new to Krishna consciousness, and there were going to be some shortcomings. So he was, as a responsible guru, guiding them, and also the devotees were accepted him as a spiritual master and had faith that he will guide them in their spiritual advancement. And although it was difficult for them to follow all the rules of Brahman, of the Brahmana culture and Vaishnava culture, but Prabhupada was hopeful that with time, um, they will. And most importantly, as per Rupa Goswami's principle, or the most important principle, was engaging them in Krishna consciousness, and they were chanting and rendering devotional service, and whatever talents they had, were engaged in the service of Krishna. And Prabhupada was expertly doing this to the, as it says, to the furthest limit the history of Vaishnavism had ever seen. And yeah, did I stop there, Prabhu? Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So basically, the magic has begun. Shunvatam Sukata Krishna Punya Savanakirta. Hidyantastahi Bhadrani Vidunati Susa. So slowly, yes, Srimad Bhagavatam morning program is very, very important, looks like. I can feel that, I can personally feel like that's what this morning also, AJ, and yesterday I was telling that we should have morning program. It's a big, even our temple, whatever the things we are seeing results, because even though we don't have much morning program, we are promoting it much, but still at least people coming early, that has its own impact, personally I see. But I don't know, those time, at least people made it in the morning. So it looks like morning program used to be full in Prabhupada's time, eventually. So, Vijayanand Prabhu?
Although he was engaging the boys in cooking and typing, Prabhupada was not doing any less himself. Rather, for every sincere soul who came forward to ask for service, 100 came who wanted not to serve but to challenge, speaking to them, sometimes shouting and pounding his fists. Prabhupada defended Krishna against the Maya of the philosophy. This was also his service to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakura. He had not come to America to retire. So with the passing of each new day came yet another confirmation that his work and his followers and his challenges would only increase. How much he could do was up to Krishna. I'm an old man, he said. I may go away at any moment, but if he were to go away now, certainly Krishna consciousness would also go away, because the Krishna consciousness society was nothing but him. His figure leading the chanting while his head moved back and forth in small motions of ecstasy. His figure walking in and out of temple through the courtyard or into the apartment, his person sitting down smilingly to discuss philosophy by the hour. He was the sole bearer and maintainer of the small, fragile, controlled atmosphere of Krishna consciousness on the New York's Lower East Side. So this explains the situation. Like slowly, all those hippies are slowly transforming, and they are helping Prabhupada in cooking as well as typing. But still, every day, Prabhupada met few challenges, not few, lots of challenges, and people, as long as there is at one end, people are transforming and helping him and doing the devotion service. On the other end, there are other people who are who used to come to him and challenge himself. And he used to defend Krishna against the Mayada philosophy, and that is one of the primary reason, which he was doing as a service for his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. And he also know that he did not came to America to retire, but to do progress and continuous preaching. And as the days progress, his challenges and a lot of people who are criticizing also increased, but still he proceeded with his mission. And he was also mentioned sometimes like he was like an old man and he may go away at any moment, but he felt like if he goes away, the Krishna consciousness movement will also go away, because everything right now rests on him only. And it is his duty to to bear everything and to continue focusing on developing the movement. So since he was old, still he was also the bearer and the maintainer of the small Krishna Consciousness Society at the New York Lower East Side.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So with this, we finish this beautiful now. All wonders will be seeing in all this time. We also cried along with Prabhupada's situation. Now the smiling, happy moments are going to come more and more. So we'll move to the next chapter, which is chapter 19. Second, planting the seed. Yeah, I have the book also. It's planting the seed, chapter 19. I'll read this. Does what you told us this morning, Howard asked, mean we are supposed to accept the spiritual master to be God? That means he is due the same respect as God, being God's representative? Prabhupada replied calmly. Then he is not God. No, Prabhupada said, God is God. The spiritual master is his representative. Therefore, he is as good as God because he can deliver God to the sincere disciple. Is that clear? From dialogue with Hayagriva. I don't know, Brajaspu is there. You see his internet is not good. You want to try or should we proceed? Brajaspu, planting the seed. Okay, August 1966. So it was makeshift, a storefront turned temple and a two-room apartment transformed into the Guru's residence and study. But it was complete nonetheless. It was a complete monastery amid the city slums. The temple, the storefront, was quickly becoming known among the hip underground of the Lower East Side. The courtyard was a strangely peaceful place for aspiring monks, with its little garden, bird sanctuary, and trees squeezed in between the front and the rear buildings. The Swami's back room was the inner sanctum of the monastery. Each room had a flavor all its own, or rather, it took on its particular character from the Swami's activities there. It took on its particular character from the Swami's activities there. The temple room was his kirtan and lecture hall. The lecture was always serious and formal. Even from the beginning, when there was no dais and he had to sit on a straw mat facing a few guests, it was clear he was here to instruct, not to invite casual give and take dialogue. Questions had to wait until he finished speaking. The audience would sit on the floor and listen to 45 minutes as he delivered the Vedic knowledge intact, always speaking on the basis of Vedic authority, quoting Sanskrit, quoting the previous spiritual masters, delivering perfect knowledge supported with reason and arguments, while contending with noises of the street. He lectured with exacting scholarship, and deeply committed devotion. It appeared that he has long ago mastered all the references and conclusions of his predecessors and had even come to anticipate all intellectual challenges. So this is the situation now with this chapter as planting the seed. Is Prabhupada's mood, and even the small tiny apartment and the storefront, it made a complete monastery. How it happened, based on the Prabhupada's activity, the place he cooked is becomes kitchen, the place he serves lectures is a temple hall, and the apartment, the type of work he does, that really transform into what do you call a monastery. And people find very peaceful in immediately. Looks like gradually they find a big change, spiritually transformed. I think I read this right. Yeah. And now Prabhupada has been always been grave when he's speaking. He did not compromise in his lecture. He did not try to flatter people. He was authoritative. He was grave in his talk. No compromise, no jokes. In the sense that people have to. Those are sincere, they should stay. Those are not sincere, they can go. That's what I understand basically. When there's no room, you cannot just make an argument. Here's I'm giving, you accept it. It's not like let's come and sit and discuss and conclude. He was authoritative already. That's the mood he did. Okay. Nipa, you can read. Nipa, did I miss anybody here? I'm sorry if I missed anybody. I think everybody read. Yeah, Prasant, you can read, please.
He also held kirtanas in the storefront. Like the lectures, the kirtanas were serious, but they were not so formal. Prabhupada was lenient during kirtana. Visitors would bring harmoniums, wooden flutes, guitars, and they would follow the melody or create their own improvisations. Someone bought an old string bass and bow, and an inspired guest could always pick up the bow and play along. Some of the boys had found the innards of an upright piano, waiting on the curb garbage, waiting on the curb with someone's garbage, and they had brought it to the temple and placed it near the entrance. During the kirtana, freewheeling guests would run their hands over the wires, creating strange vibrations. Robert Nelson, several weeks back, had bought a large cymbal that now hung from the ceiling, dangling close to the Swami's tires. But there was a limit to the extravagance. Sometimes, when a newcomer picked up the kartals and played them in a beat other than the standard 1, 2, 3, Swamiji would ask one of the boys to correct him, even at the risk of offending the guest. Prabhupada led the chanting and drummed with one hand on a small bongo. Even on this little bongo drum, he played Bengali mridanga rhythms so interesting that a local Congo drummer used to come just to hear the Swami get set in some good licks. So the Swami's the Swami's kirtanas were a new high, and the boys would glance at each other with widening eyes and shaking heads as they responded to his chanting. Comparing it to their previous drug experiences and signaling each other favorably. This is great. It's better than LSD. Hey man, I'm really getting high on this. And Prabhupada encouraged their newfound intoxication. So it explains about the kirtans and the lectures that Prabhupada used to give. So the kirtans were more lenient, and many people can get their own instruments and play along in the kirtana, and they can also create their own improvisations. And sometimes when a new guest arrives and he doesn't play in the 1, 2, 3 of the symbols, then he would be corrected by the other boys on the instruction of Prabhupada. So that the kirtan will go on harmoniously. And and the boys also liked the kirtana. Prabhupada would use a small bongo, and he used to play the drum. And he also played Bengali mridanga rhythms on it. And even a local Congo drummer used to come just to hear that. And the boys are very happy with the kirtana. They say, they praise it, saying that it is they are getting high compared to LSD. And Prabhupada encouraged their new intoxication.
Yeah. Nipa, you can read. Okay. Cycle Prabhu, you can do. Ranath, I forgot if Mataji was sitting there. I'm sorry if she's there. She can read next. Cycle Prabhu.
Sure. As maestro of these kirtans, he was also acting expertly as guru. Lord Chaitanya had said, there are no hard and fast rules for chanting the holy name, and Prabhupada brought the chanting to the Lower East Side just that way, a kindergarten of spiritual life. He once called the temple. Here he taught the ABCs of Krishna consciousness, lecturing from Bhagavad Gita, and leading the group chanting of Hare Krishna. Sometimes after the final kirtan, he would invite those who were interested to join him for further talks in his apartment. In the back room of his apartment, Prabhupada was usually alone, especially in the early morning hours, 2, 3, and 4 a.m., when almost no one else was awake. In these early hours, his room was silent, and he worked alone in the intimacy of his relationship with Krishna. He would sit on the floor behind his suitcase desk, worshipping Krishna by typing the translations and purports of his Srimad Bhagavatam. But this same back room was also used for meetings, and anyone who brought himself to knock on the Swami's door could enter and speak with him at any time, face to face. Prabhupada would sit back from his typewriter and give his time to talking, listening, answering questions, sometimes arguing or joking. A visitor might sit alone with him for half an hour before someone else would knock and Swamiji would invite the newcomer to join them. New guests would come and others would go, but Swamiji stayed and sat and talked. So here, Prabhupada was acting as a guru, and he would also basically not making any hard and fast rules for chanting the holy name. He called the temple as a kindergarten for his spiritual life, where he was teaching the ABCs of Krishna consciousness, giving lectures from Bhagavad Gita, and doing kirtan. And after the kirtan, if anyone was interested for further discussions, he would invite them to his apartment. And in the back room, he usually used to get up very early in the morning, between 2 to 4, and used to work on the translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he would work when it was very quiet. He would use the same back room in the apartment to have discussions. He was open for anyone to come and knock his door and discuss and speak to him about philosophy. And sometimes it would be a continuous visit, like somebody would come and somebody else would knock and join them, they would leave and come. So there was regular traffic in his apartment.
So did you see this? Prabhupada, in the temple, he would give simple, but then those who want to have more sincere and serious things, they had separately, asked them to meet separately. So we need to make sure that we have both available for devotees to grow more, and the new people also. So okay, all right. Who can read now? Prasan, you read, right?
Yes, Prabhupada.
Swati Mataji, you can read.
You asked Divyarada Mataji also,
Oh,
Prabhupada.
she's there. Yeah, thank you. You have sharp memory. Divyarada Mataji is there. Pranath Prabhu. Okay,
Okay. And
you can read.
okay. Generally, visits were formal. His guest would ask philosophical questions and he would answer, much the same as after a lecture in the storefront. But occasionally, some of the boys who were becoming serious followers would monopolize his time, especially on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturday, and Sunday nights, when there was no evident lecture in the temple.
Evening
Sorry,
lectures.
when there is no evening lectures in the temple, often they would ask him personal questions. What was it like when he first come to New York? What about India? Did he have followers there? Were his family members devotees of Krishna? What was his spiritual master like? And then Prabhupada would talk in different way, quite, quieter, more intimate and humorous. He told how one morning in New York he has first seen snow and thought someone had whitewashed the building. He told how he had spoken to at several churches in Butler. And when the boy asked what kind of churches they were, he smiled and replied, I don't know. And they laughed with him. He would reminisce freely about the British control of India and about Indian politics. He told them it was not so much Gandhi as Subhash Chandra Bose who had liberated India. Subhash Chandra Bose has gone outside of India and started the Indian National Army. He entered into an agreement with Hitler that Indian soldiers fighting from British India who surrendered to the Germans could be returned to Indian National Army to fight against the British. And it was this shown of force by Bose more than Gandhi, non-violence, which leads to the Indians' independence.
So this is uh, opportunity for other days for some of the devotees. It says Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. When there's no evening lecture, they got some time for Prabhupada. But we always hear that Prabhupada has been always busy, so that his moods were quieter, more intimate, and humorous. Personal time. Now, from the questions they're asking, please, it's a very wonderful thing to see. They're genuinely now asking, as if like the relationship has been established, the trust has been established, there a little clarity into their mind. Otherwise, they won't ask this kind of questions. They're now inquisitive from, how did you come? You had a full of followers. What did you do? What was your experience? They're intimately they're asking this question, and Prabhupada is answering about political things. Looks like at the beginning, for us also, we don't know. There are many churches. They say, what kind of church you are? I don't know. So they say, oh, there's so many types of churches they have. So this way he had a very intimate time with some of the devotees, even though they are new, but they got Prabhupada's association. Ajay, please.
There we go. He talked of his. Oh, I just lost my monitor. There it goes. Okay. He talked of his childhood at the turn of the century when street lamps were gaslit and carriages and horse-drawn trams were the only vehicles on Calcutta's dusty streets. These talks charmed the boys even more than the transcendental philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and drew them affectionately to him. He told about his father, Gaur Mohan De, a pure Vaishnava. His father had been a cloth merchant, and his family had been intimately related with the aristocratic Mullaks of Calcutta. The Mullaks had a deity of Krishna, and Prabhupada's father had given him a deity to worship as a child. He used to imitate the worship of the Govinda deity in the Mullaks temple. As a boy, he had held his own Ratha Yastra festivals each year, imitating in miniature the gigantic festival at Jagannath Puri. And his father's friends used to joke, "Oh, the Ratha Yatra ceremony is going on at your home, and you did not invite us. What is this?" His father would reply, "This is child's play, that is all." But the neighbor said, "Oh, child's play? You are avoiding us by saying it's for children." Prabhupada finally remembered his father, who had never wanted him to be a worldly man, who had given him lessons in Mridanga, and who had prayed to visiting sadhus that one day the boy would grow up to be a devotee of Radharani. One night he told how he had met his spiritual master. He told how he had begun his own chemical business but had left home in 1959 had taken sannyas. The boys were interested, but so ignorant of the things Prabhupada was talking about that at the mention of a word like mridanga or sannyas, they would have to ask what it meant. And he would go on conversational tangents describing Indian spices, Indian drums, even Indian women. And whatever he spoke about, he would eventually shine upon it the light of the Shastra. He did not ration out such talk, but gave it out abundantly by the hour, day after day, as long as there was a real live inquirer. So again, as part of these meetings, these informal meetings where the guys would show up and just spend time talking to Prabhupada, he would tell them stories about growing up in India and just how life was there. Talking about how he used to have his own Krishna deity and would reenact the Rath Yatra festival at his home in miniature scale. And he told him about his father and how the sadhus used to come to the house and how he had hoped that one day he'd come up to be a devotee of Radharani, about his chemical company and leaving to take sannyas. But the problem that he runs into, and not so much a problem, but just something that he runs into, is that these guys have no frame of reference for Indian culture. So anytime he would say something that, like they say there, like, and I'm probably not even saying it right myself, Mridanga. I don't even know how to say it. So I know what it is now. I know what it is at least. But yeah, like anytime he would mention something like that, he would then have to kind of go and educate them on what that is, and it would take him off into a completely other, a different direction. But even when that would happen, when he would get pulled off in these tangents that are unrelated, well, slightly related to the story, he would always then bring it back around to linking it to Shastra somehow, still relaying the message. And he was happy to have these conversations as long as there was somebody willing to listen.
Nice.
More important.
Please go ahead. Done? You're done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Oh yeah, I felt I interrupted.
No,
Vijayanand Prabhu, please.
So from at noon, the front room became a dining hall, and in the evenings, a place of intimate worship. Prabhupada had kept the room with its 12-foot square hardwood parquet floor clean and bare. The solitary coffee table against the wall between the two courtyard windows was the only furniture. Daily at noon, a dozen men were now taking lunch here with him. A meal was cooked by Keith, who spent the whole morning in the kitchen. At first, Keith had cooked only for the Swami. He had mastered the art of cooking dal, rice, and sabji in the Swami's three-tiered boiler, and usually there had been enough for 1 or 2 guests as well. But soon more guests had begun to gather, and Prabhupada had told Keith to increase the quantity, abandoning the small three-tiered cooker until he was cooking for a dozen hungry men. The boarders, Raphael and Don, though not so interested in the Swami's talk, would arrive punctually each day for prasadam, usually with a friend or two who had wandered in the storefront. Steve would drop by from his job at the welfare office. The Mark Street group would come, and there were others. The kitchen was stocked with standard Indian spices, fresh chilies, fresh ginger root, whole cumin seeds, turmeric, and asafoetida. Keith mastered the basic cooking techniques and passed them on to Chuck, who became his assistant. Some of the other boys would stand at the doorway of the narrow kitchenette to watch Keith as one thick pancake like chapati after another blew up like the inflated football over the open flame and then took its place in the steaming stack. So this explains the the prasadam time during the lunch time. In the noon, the front room of his become a dining hall of his apartment, and evening it became the place of the worship. However, Prabhupada kept the place very clean and fair, and he just had a coffee table, and he had only one furniture. So daily, more than a dozen people are taking lunch, and the meal was prepared by Keith, who spent most of the time of his morning in preparing the lunch prasadam. So initially, Keith only cooked for Swami, and he became a master in the art of cooking dal, rice, and sabji in the three-tiered cooker, the boiler cooker, which Swami was having, which was sufficient enough to feed one or two guests as well. But as the time progressed, more guests started coming in, and Prabhupada instructed Keith to increase the quantity by not using the three-tier cooker. And since there are they need to provide prasadam for dozen hungry men, and there are people, the boarders, Raphael, Don, they were not interested in Swami's talk, but they would arrive punctually for the prasadam, and also they would bring in one or two other friends, and also other people like Steve, and as well as the Mart Street group. Everyone will come for the prasadam, for the lunchtime. And there is a description about his kitchen as well. So the kitchen was like a traditional standard Indian spices like chilies, ginger root, and cumin seeds, turmeric. And also Keith has become a master in the cooking techniques, and he had also got an assistant like Chuck, who became an assistant. And there are other boys who watched keenly how Keith is preparing, and how he's making the chapati and all those stuffs, and they were interested, and they were astonished to see how these things are getting prepared.
Mahaprasadam ki ja. Such a nice description. How it is really bringing intimacy. We're taking prasadam together. That's what really, again, helping in building the strong community, actually. Very much. Now, any quick reflections on this? Whatever we did, we have a couple of minutes. I can see that prasadam, how it really binds. It's not just a food, it is the mood with which you cook, with the mood with which offer, the mood with which you serve, and the mood with which you have honor the prasadam. That really makes a big impact on the community, looks like. That's one of the things. Any other?
Yeah, I was gonna say in the other chapter, when it's a little thing, but when Howard was saying that he had his master's in English and he was teaching at Ohio State University, it kind of gives you a little insight into the hippie culture at the time, right? These were kind of these weren't they were upper middle class kids. They were smart, they were educated. A lot of them weren't. You instantly think, oh, these are kind of like low life deadbeat kids, but that wasn't the case. They were educated kids that were just rebelling, essentially.
And on the other way, it's a very weird situation. You won't expect like this. Only very ignorant people can behave like this. But on the other way, even if you're such a highly educated person and professor, and your teacher, and you're doing this, it doesn't go together until now also. All in America, we are, many times we are seeing a teacher smoking and everything, I heard. But till now, I hear that. But otherwise, it's not very common in India. Teacher's position is very respectful position, even though they were such a highly, qualified in such, but their activities were very, not very clean. Thank you for reminding and sharing on that. Any other comments? Didn't we see how all these people awakened in their heart and started thinking, giving a surprise to Prabhupada by preparing the hall into a temple room? That's a very big thing, That's a very big thing. And morning Bhagavatam program helped. As they regularly attended, the heart started getting clear, and they start seeing the things as a normal human being now. And now it's the prasadam, and everybody was giving their hands. I know it's time, it's 8:44. So thank you so much for all your time. I'm very grateful. We'll continue tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu.